Thea is awakened.
Do you like RPGs, 4X strategy, survival games, and roguelikes? Good, because I don't know which one of these Thea the Awakening is, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't either. All I know is that it was created by MuHa Games and features a Slavic mythology setting. The story goes that the world Thea was engulfed by a mysterious force called the Darkness. In Thea the Awakening,
it is up to you to find a way to rebuild Thea, banish the darkness, and strengthen mankind.
Yeah, what he said. There are 3 basic modes of gameplay in Thea: the world map, choose your own adventure style events, and card challenges. The world map is a familiar hex grid. From here you can manage your village and also your expeditions, which are mobile groups of people sent out to explore the world. Although I called Thea a 4X strategy game earlier, it would be more accurate to say it's a 3X game. There aren't any expansion options. You can't build new settlements or even grow the size and tiles of your village. Although this is missing, it is for good reason. Different tiles have different resources in them, and your units can only gather resources from the tiles in and adjacent to the village, or the camp in the case of an expedition. As the village is fixed in size and can't move, expeditions are the primary means of gathering resources. This is good because it rewards you for venturing beyond the settlement's walls. The downside is that there isn't a lot to do each turn. Gathering, building, and crafting can all be automated, so I sometimes found myself burning away the turns waiting for something to do. It is possible to create multiple expeditions and have them do different things, but that requires manpower, which is a little rare in the early game. It is an apocalyptic world after all. Both the villages and expeditions require food and fuel to survive, and can be attacked by enemies. This means that there is a bit of a balancing act between keeping people in the village and sending them out on expeditions. The random attacks also mean it's safer to create one big expedition rather than many small ones. Although this sort of leads to a situation where the reward is proportional to the risk involved, it doesn't really. High-level crafting materials are more important than low-level ones, and sources for these are often near high-difficulty mobs, which require more people to handle. For example, dragon bones will probably be near dragons. Sending people out to gather lots of low-level materials isn't very beneficial, and there is no looming threat that requires you to grow as fast as possible. Enemy civilizations don't seem to exist, so you can take your time to grow. That said, I don't think Thea is too easy. Even on normal mode, I had to deal with some character death, and there are many difficulty options available beyond that. Although Thea the Awakening lacks some aspects typical of 4X games, it replaces them with new features. For example, choose your own adventure style events are a common occurrence in this game. These range in complexity, with some events leading to ongoing quests, and others being simple attacks by enemies. There seems to be a good variety of events, and you often have multiple ways to deal with the problems you face. For example, even when dealing with random mobs, I got options to sneak attack them and poison them, in addition to a straight up fight. It's beneficial to take these options too. Fighting can result in wounds, reducing a character's health, and increasing the chance that they die. As there are so few characters, it is important to preserve them. There is no chance of injury when choosing any of the alternatives to fighting. Their rewards may also vary depending on the chosen option. One time, a group of orcs had kidnapped a few children, and I was sent to rescue them by a demon. Weird, I know. Surprising none, it turned out that the demon was the one planning to harm the kids, and the orcs were protecting them. I could have just killed the orcs and taken the kids, but instead I used the power of my words and won a speech challenge. They handed over the children, who would one day grow into new characters, and even gave me some rare materials with demon warding properties. Most of these events, like the orc example from earlier, are resolved through card challenges. The same card game is used for all challenge types, but different stats are used for each one. For example, weapon damage is what affects a character's offense in fighting challenges, but speech skill is what affects a character's offense in social challenges. During the setup phase, the card minigame splits your character cards into 2 hands, offense and tactical. The offense cards can be placed directly onto the board and can attack the enemy. The tactical hand uses a variety of abilities to provide support. For example, a character with medicine skill in a cure sickness challenge can provide a defense boost to an ally on the board. You can use the tactical hand to cause the opponent to discard cards from their hand, give your units first strike, increase their offense and defense values, confuse the enemies, and even place the tactical card itself on the board. However, after the initial setup phase, just 2 rounds of belligerence play out. Cards brought onto the board from the tactical hand are confused for the first round and can't attack until the second. After the second round is complete, the setup phase begins again. This goes on until either team loses. Thea's card minigame is a very interesting way of making different skills as enjoyable and involving as combat. Due to the high level of abstraction, the same resolve mechanics are used across the board. This leads to a slight lack of variety, but only just. The varied skills of each character in the group are enough to differentiate the overall feel of the challenge types. More importantly, the character attributes are tied into the resolve mechanics in a meaningful way, and have a strong impact on the gameplay. For example, crafters may not be of use on the front line of fights, but they can be powerful in the tactical hand. My only problem is that sometimes the challenges take a long time because of the slow animations and the repetition of the setup phase. Thankfully, there is an auto-resolve option to quickly deal with very weak foes. In addition to the gameplay modes I spoke of earlier, Thea the Awakening is advertised for its crafting mechanics. Now, I'm not a huge fan of crafting in most games. I avoid it whenever possible, but in Thea, it's a core part of the gameplay. To my surprise, I found the crafting system quite enjoyable. The way it works is that each recipe gives you the option of using different materials as substitutes. So if you don't have thread, for example, you can make a shirt with leather. The higher the quality of the materials you use, the better the bonuses you get. Shields made of regular wood work just fine, but shields made of elven wood give a dexterity bonus. You unlock recipes through research, and gain research points the same way you earn experience, by exploring the world and by defeating enemies. The crafting system also applies to construction, except buildings require more resources and provide different types of bonuses. Going back to the story and setting, it feels a little generic. Although Thea claims to be based on Slavic mythology, it's more like they took the pantheon and some of the demons and threw them into a typical medieval fantasy setting. You've got the standard orcs, dwarfs, elves, and wizards running around, and the rare Baba Yaga seems more like a novelty than a core part of the world. The writing is at times a little long-winded, but it's easily skippable, and I'll give the game some credit for making me laugh. I think Thea the Awakening is very enjoyable, and it really pulled me in for turn after turn of gameplay. Although the strategic layer is a little less involved than most 4X games, Thea makes up for this by adding some decision making in the choose your own adventure style events and the card challenges. The game has solid resolve mechanics, and character attributes play an important role, which I find appealing as a fan of RPGs. Overall, Thea the Awakening is a real treat and combines a lot of good ideas into one fun game.